Lucky number 7. Loy sin off, or loy tin off, or lo tin off, or lo tin off. Do not commit adultery. Okay. Wow. Do not commit adultery. Should be easy. This should be the easiest one to do. If you're a female, don't let that male parts that isn't your husband's male parts there. If you're a male, don't put your male parts other than your wife's female parts. Easy. Very good. Whew. Not so easy. Not so easy. Not so easy. The Torah says, "V'chai b'hem." You should live by them. You should live by them. The purpose of the whole world, of everything, and of the Torah is not to take away from you anything. It is not. It is to enhance your life. It is to enhance your life. In every example of adultery, every single one, in every example of adultery, through all of human history, one party is pretty darn sure that they're doing the right thing. They have made ample physical evidence of the fact that they are very pleased with their actions. The other party wants to die. Now, you might think that it's simply a moral matter, that you should care about other people. Because you care about other people, you should suffer and sacrifice yourself for other people. No, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Let's look at the 10 Commandments so far. Number one, who is God? When you hear God, when you think of God, who should you think of? The one that created the world, everything, your world, you, and gave you freedom. The freedom that you have to hear this video, that's God. The God that gives you the freedom to make your own choices, to think your own thoughts, to come to your own conclusions, to do your own thing, to be free, to not do anything if you want to, at least one day a week. That's God. That's God. And nothing else. Nothing else. And because they know, there's no way to talk about God. God's not a he, he's not a she, he's not a she, he's not an it, it's not a he, and it's not a they either. That's why you shouldn't speak the name Yud Hey Vav Hey, because otherwise what are we talking about? And definitely don't be making, no golden or whatever else that'll diminish everything else by its side, because there's nothing outside of this God. Nothing's outside of it. It's all for your life, for your freedom. Then, because the Torah knows that, let's just say the Torah, it's easier because we can talk about a physical book, it's right there, we can read the words ourselves. God, what do we can't even talk about God, that's what it says, don't even talk about me, but somehow you have to. All right, reference these words, that'll do. It says, all right, Sabbath. All right, we're glad you got it down, but you know what? If you're not keeping one day a week completely free, then you definitely don't have it down. The Messianic era is intended to be a time when it is entirely Sabbath, when we are completely free, when we are 100% free. I can't get too much into that right now, but at least one day a week. Unfortunately, for so many people, they misunderstand the Sabbath and think that it's a time of sacrifice. And I don't know what to say. I mean, I do know what to say, but it would take many hours to, so it's not for right now. Okay, now it starts to get difficult. Now we're starting to talk about other people, right? Honor thy father and thy mother. Well, that seems easy, unless you take the perspective that really the Torah is for you, and God is really just your God. When you die, mom and dad don't exist no more. Before you were born, mom and dad didn't exist. Because you didn't exist. After they die, they also don't exist. We're not talking about afterlife stuff. Let's set that aside. Your life, your God, your creator is just yours at the end of the day. The fact that we sometimes feel the need to force ourselves to care for other people means that we don't really get who we are. It shouldn't be a forced thing. We have no idea who we are. Okay, it's dealing with mom and pop, right? I had to make a long video of it, and I had to find a way to explain where it definitively makes sense. Where this mom and pop business definitively makes sense, because it's somewhat complicated. It's complicated because a correct reading of the Torah is of pure libertarianism. A correct reading of the Torah is that there are two approaches to God. One is the fear of God, the other is the love of God. Most people, almost all of the time, require the fear of God, otherwise they won't do any of it. But for those people who are capable of achieving the love of God, all of it is obvious. There's no sacrifice. As a libertarian, as a completely self-centered individual, you will care for, you will love, you will take care of everybody. You will increase the human happiness of the people in the world, of everything and of everyone. You will love all of creation and bring them near to Torah. That's when you love God. Unfortunately, for most people, it's very, very hard to get there, and no one's even trying to get most people there at all anyway. So we fall back on the fear of God and Honor thy father and thy mother. Do not commit adultery. That's really, really, really not the correct reading of the Torah. That is the secondary reading of the Torah. That's for people, that's to keep everyone in line. But the reality is, it's all yours. And as the second of the Ten Commandments said, God himself said, you can see it in the video here in this series, God says that, I remember, I hold on to these sins of the fathers unto their children, unto the third generation, unto the fourth generation for my haters. I do kindness for thousands, for my lovers and those who keep my commandments. You see over there even the two distinctions. Lovers is the main guys. Those who, they're keeping the commandments, fine, well, we won't wipe them out, but God didn't make the world for you to keep his commandments. He meant for you to live the world in such a way that it's entirely unnecessary for him to even tell you the commandments, because you love God and therefore it's all obvious. The great Rambam, Maimonides, at the end of his life, and nobody understood Judaism the way that Maimonides understood Judaism. The Jews say, Mimoshe ad Moshe lo kam kamoshe. From Moses until Moses Maimonides, there have been none like him. And at the end of his life, he wrote that he still hadn't figured out all of the Torah. That unfortunately, in some part, he was still following some parts of the Torah out of fear, out of, it says, and therefore I'm doing it, without being able to do it out of complete love. And he was still working on it to the last day of his life. He was working on being able to love God by understanding everything and how beautiful and magnificent everything is. Trust me, if there's a Jew to know about, an historical Jew who you can read about from all kinds of documents that are still being discovered, Maimonides is the guy, Rambam. So love thy father and thy mother. Honor. Honor thy father and thy mother, and it'll be good for you in this life. That's what it says there. We read it in the fifth of the commandments. Well, what about if your father or mother were people who engage in this avon, in this kind of crooked sin, in this iniquity, in this misunderstanding of reality? What if they bequeathed to you a concept of God that is deadly, as deadly that you will end up passing on to your children and grandchildren, or be wiped out before them? How do you understand honor thy father and mother? That's why, to me anyway, the first of the 4 commandments are so easy to understand. They were shorter than the other videos. These that people think are obvious, don't murder. That has to be explained at length. That has to be explained at length, how you will live longer. I swear, in the name of the Torah, L'man yarichon yomecha, if we follow what was discussed in the previous video called Do Not Be a Murderer, which is around 20 minutes, or in the video before that saying I am a murderer and so are you, which is nearly 2 hours, which explains that 20 minutes. You will live longer. You yourself. It's not a sacrifice. If you yourself take on responsibility for the whole world, I've tried that, you will live shorter. It's not wise. You can't do it. But if we as a world, all of us, take responsibility for all of us, not in some kind of Stalin-esque government where it's done by threat of gulag. No, only love of God can bring us to this. Fear doesn't work. You will live longer. You will live longer through lo tirtzach, through do not murder. Please watch that 20-minute video. It's essential. And it applies for all of these as well. From love thy mother and honor. I keep saying love because I keep translating it to American language. You see how complicated it is to understand what it is that these things are referring to. How quickly I, who am teaching a thing on this, keep accidentally reverting to the American concepts, to the modern concepts. It's nuts. This is hard stuff. I'm sorry my videos are so long, but I can't imagine myself understanding them if they were shorter. So in this case, lo tinaf. Do not commit adultery. Why? A little bit of Monica, da-da. All the songs. All the love songs, all the sex songs, all of them. Going back to the Bible itself. Shir HaShirim Asher L'Shlomo. Just look up Song of Songs. It's a love song. Song of Songs is a love song. The Bible is not against love. The Bible is not against physical intimacy. It's really, 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 really not at all. It feels that way to some degree, doesn't it? And it feels like you're sacrificing. Like if you're in love with somebody and they are not your spouse, you have a spouse or they have a spouse, well, okay, shouldn't you live? The chai bohem, live by the rules? If you're following the rules and it's causing you to suffer and to have less life and to take away your freedom, take away your ability to worship Anochi Yehovah Elohecha asher hotzesicha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeis avodim. The Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. Bereishis bara Elohim es hashamayim es haaretz. In the beginning, Elohim, the God, created the heavens and the earth. The Creator, the one who made you. If you're suffering because you're following the mitzvos, something is off. Something is very, very off. Now here as well, same with Lo Tirtzach. I have to address society as a whole. For you as an individual, yeah, you should try to have as good a marriage as you can if you're in it. But we have to talk about what society the Torah was written in, and we have to talk about what society the Torah desires. And by the way, this statement, V'chai b'hem, you should live by them, do you know where it is? Do you know what it's referring to? This isn't one of those things where somebody takes a few letters, a few words out of the Bible and takes it completely out of context. When I was spending the last few days cogitating on this issue of how I'm going to address Lo Tinaf, eventually I resolved that I'm going to have to start with V'chai b'hem, live by them. Because otherwise it's a lesson in morality, it's anti-libertarian, it's anti what I understand God, and the Torah to be telling us. And it's just now that I actually looked up the actual verse. This is completely, completely true. It's in Leviticus. It's in Leviticus chapter 18. Leviticus chapter 18 is the chapter of the Bible that tells you everything you have to know about relationships and sex. Really, relationships and sex. For example, relationships, it talks about lying with, right? Which is, kind of a PG level of saying being together intimately. And then it talks about zera, literally semen, seed, over and over and over again. It's talking about relationships and sex, this chapter. And it covers everything, down to bestiality, all the things not to do. It starts off with saying, ish, every single man, el kol she'er b'saro, in other words, every single man, because they came from Egypt, where certain sexual rules didn't apply to the Pharaoh. Pharaohs often married brother and sister. It's saying, no, ish, every man, no exceptions. That's why it's really important to know the context of who originally read this. Yeah, it relates to us too, but if you don't know the language in which it was read originally, it's really easy to miss the point often. So, ish, every man, al kol she'er b'saro, lo sikravu legalos erva ani Yehovah. For all of your relations, all your physical flesh relations, don't come close to uncover their nakedness. I am Yehovah. And then it goes from there to your father, your mother, all your relatives, etc., etc. Chapter 18, Leviticus, all the scary sex stuff. Scary because every environment in all of history has had a major problem with at least one of these. In our day, it's really, really clear. It says that a man who sleeps with a man is gross, right? I'm not saying that. Please, YouTube, don't undo this channel. I'm quoting these guys. That's all I'm doing. All right. Right? You see how but I'm making a joke of it, but there's elements of truth to this, really, too. There really, really is. So that's why it's scary, scary stuff. Because in every generation, in every society, most people, for all of them, are like, yeah, anybody who violates that, kill him, string him up. But for one of them, they're like, whoa. Let's call in some charismatic pseudo-preacher to explain to us how, what this really means is, because this one here is problematic. So it's fair to talk about it as scary. And that is where, right before this, is where it says, live by them. Which the rabbis say, live by them, don't die by them. In other words, if the Torah is costing you life, if it's costing you freedom, if it's costing you happiness, if it's costing you something, there is something very, very, very wrong. Very, 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 very wrong. I'll read you the introduction word for word. Vayedaber Yehovah el Moshe lemor. And Yehovah said to Moses, saying, Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak unto the sons of Israel, v'yamarta alehem, and you shall say to them, Ani Yehovah Elohechem, I am Yehovah your God. Which, every verse in the Torah is considered essential. The rabbis have not stopped pointing out from the earliest days until today that in the 5 books of Moses there's a verse, Achais Leitan Timna. The sister of Leitan was Timna. Who's Leitan? Who's Timna? Who cares? And the rabbi said that this verse is as unexpurgable you can't remove it. It's as essential. It's as critical to the structure of the Torah as Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. It's critical. We don't understand what it means necessarily or why it's critical. Fine. That's okay. Maybe we will. Maybe there's stuff in the ancient documents that we should, take seriously, that try to explain it, try to understand it. Maybe there's traditions. Maybe someday we will know. There's a lot of things in here that were not understood through much of history, that we've only come to understand correctly now through modern archaeology. Literally, modern archaeology has helped us understand lots about this book. The essentials were always understood, at least could have been. Not always understood correctly. The essentials could have been understood. But maybe one day we'll really understand why it's so important to know that the sister of Leitan was Timnah. But the Torah is also a human document. The Torah dibra b'lishnit b'nei Adam. The rabbis of the Second Temple period would say that the Torah is an Aramaic term. The Torah speaks in a language of humans, of the sons of Adam, the children of Adam. Humans. So when God goes out of his way to say his name, he's telling you, take this seriously. Right? The book of Leviticus, in these particular chapters, which some people call the Holiness Code. Some people call these chapters. These are like, I am God, this is critical, and it's right smack dab in the center of the 5 books of Moses. You open to the middle, this is where you're going to find. There's obviously a reason for that. So, say to the sons of Israel, and you should say to them, I am Yehovah your God. In other words, God is telling Moshe literally in that time, you tell them those words when you're about to say this. Yes, everything that you're saying in my name, you're saying, in the name of God. But this, repeat that again, over and over again. For those who want to follow the Hebrew, if it's readable. Like the doings of the lands of Egypt, asher yeshavtem ba, that you have dwelled within her, lo sa'aseh, do not do. Uchema'aseh eretz Canaan, and like the actions of the lands of Canaan, asher ani mevi eschem shoma, that I am bringing you there, lo sa'asu, do not do, uvechukosehem lo selechu, and in their statutes do not follow. A chok is an eternal law that it's not easy for humans to understand. For example, the essentials of don't kill, everyone gets that or thinks they do. They misunderstand it as, if killing is legal, then you might kill me, I get it, don't, the simple way, right? Or at least it's moral, God says not to. Again, the Torah is all love. It's 100% love. If we don't see it, okay, fine, we're just human. We got to try. You have to understand that is the point. The Torah is love. And if we don't get there, that's fine. We can have problems. If you have a problem with something here, you're justified. You're correct to have a problem. We have to got to work it out, Anyways, so that's what a chok is. Literally, it means an engraving, because it's in the eternal documents. They had papyrus paper in Egypt, which uncommon. Pretty much everywhere else, the way you were writing was you were chiseling into something. That's a chok, as in contrast to a mishpat, which is a judgment, which people can more easily relate to. So God says, do not go in their choks. Es mishpatai ta'asu, my judgments you should do. Ve'es chukosai tishmeru, and my engravings you shall guard. Lo lechos bahem, to go in them. Ani Yehovah Elohechem, I am Yehovah your God. Ushmartem, and you should safeguard. Repeat it again. Es chukosai, my engravings. Ve'es mishpatai, and my judgments. Asher ya'aseh osam ha'adam v'chai bohem, that a man will do. Ha'adam literally means an earthling, not literally a man. The Bible, in the beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, it says that Adam was male and female. I'm not going to get into that right now, but the point is that the word Adam, the word man in the Torah, it goes out of its way to say this isn't a gender thing. We're talking about humans. Also, it doesn't say Yisrael, it doesn't say Jews here. It says man, humans. So you should guard my engravings and my judgments. That a man will do and he will live by them. Ani Yehovah, I am Yehovah. Ish, every man. El kol she'er b'saro lo sikravu legal v'savasa. Ani Hashem. And it goes on like I told you before. All the sexual rules. So don't commit adultery. Why not? Again, half of the people who have been involved in any kind of adulterous thing thought it was definitely the right thing to do. We're talking about consenting adults. Everything here is consenting adults. In that chapter, it's all consenting adults. That's what they're talking about. Why not? So for that, we would have to have a much, much, much longer video discussing what the Torah is talking about and how our society is living so completely differently that adultery is not adultery. I mean, you see, like in the in what I usually call the Christian Bible. I wish I had a better term for it. I don't really have a better term for it, because if I call it the Bible, then I'm equating it in a way for, and if I call it something other than the Bible, other than, you know, then I'm less. It's a difficult thing to talk about, so please allow for right now. I'm calling it the Christian Bible. Essentially, I hold them in very high esteem. I don't necessarily hold every understanding of them, or even the most common understandings of those books, in high esteem. Nor do I regard it as the same as in the beginning God created heaven and earth, or as the sister of Lotan was Timnah. It's not a negative thing to say about those documents, that I hold them in incredible high esteem, but less than the sister of Lotan is Timnah. And I think that every Christian person, if I was speaking with you personally, one-on-one, after a while, you would 100% agree with me. So please understand, I mean nothing whatsoever insulting by it. And at this point, the majority of the people who can really hear what I'm saying in these videos are Christians. And I am not separate from you. I am not separate from you. I think that we would agree if we had, again, long enough private conversation that wasn't like, it can be videoed and shared with the world, but they would have to watch the whole friggin' thing to get the context. I think we would come to an absolute agreement. You would understand what I'm saying and agree with what I'm saying. I'm being 100% genuine about that. Really am. So we would have to talk about our society and what the Torah is talking about. But for right now, this video is really long, and I'm going to just say two things. And that is the society in which this was written. I'm going to say a few words about it, and the ideal one. So a few words about the society for which it was written. It was written for a society that is about 10 to 50% of the world still lives this way today. Literally. I say 10 to 50 because if you want to get caught up in precise definitions, it could be 10 or it could be up to 50. But literally, between 10 and 50% of the world still lives this way. Where when a boy or girl is born, you already more or less know who they're going to marry. They're going to marry their first cousin or their niece or their aunt or whatever, some immediate close relative, possibly a friend, a brother in arms, someone you fought in the army with, their child. You're already kind of preset this way. And it was a world in which there wasn't a lot of extra. We are living now in an era that we have no excuse to not make messianic. The fact that we are not living in a utopian world, oh my God, whoa! We deserve every bit of suffering we get. Because look what we have. Look how we're able to communicate. Look at the light coming in from the thing over here. Look at just, we are living in a world of immense glory and beauty and ability and resources and everything being free that we didn't work for. That it's previous generations understood the world, which is also Torah, for the record. Maimonides is clear that God, it tells us about himself. The only thing, what we can know about God is using our intellect to know two things: reality and Torah. Reality and Torah. And people have gotten, originally they were all pretty much religious people, Jewish and Christian. But things got weird. Let's not even talk about it because, of course, okay, we can't do that. But science is not separate from Torah. Correct science, not necessarily scientism as a religion, Scientology. You may as well call much of modern scientism Scientology. It's believe in science. People literally were telling me, I believe in science during the COVID era. That was like a common, I believe in science. I'm like, whoa, so do I. Now let's talk about this particular little issue that we're talking about. What is the scientific outcome of it? I believe in science. The priests of science. The official high priest. No, that's not science. That's not God. That's not Torah. That's none of that. That's a religion. That's Scientology. So I'm sorry to say this, but the world that we're living in right now is Eden. The people, the Kruvim, the angels holding the flaming swords keeping us out of Eden are ourselves and each other. I don't know how more clearly I can say that. We are responsible for not living in a perfect world. We have the resources. We inherited the ability to understand the world well enough that the smallest amount of labor can cover all of our essential needs. Anything beyond that, we can discuss how capitalism should work in a Torah world. But all of our essential needs, guaranteed for all living human beings, is just, it's so obvious that there's enough here. That there's enough here with a modicum minimum amount of labor on our parts. The Messianic world is here, my friends, if only we embrace it. I don't know how more clearly, there's something very wrong with us, with our world today. If you're suffering for any reason whatsoever, you should know that the fault lies in us. The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, as Shakespeare put it. So the Torah, yeah. But in those days, in the time of the Torah, the way it worked was that, you needed somebody to actually do the washing and to do the clean. You needed the hunters and the gatherers. Of course, Torah is slightly against, it's post. I'm sorry, it's not against. Torah is very in favor of that kind of society. Definitively is. The agriculture, whatever. In other words, animal husbandry. We do it completely wrong today, so I can't get into that. But the Torah is after the time period of hunting and gathering. And even then in the Torah, it's so clear how little you should have to work to cover everybody. And today, the ability to cover everybody is so easy. It's all there. It's so easy. It's so easy. We are all murderers. Watch that previous video called We Are All Murderers. We all are. We're killing ourselves just as equally as we're killing everyone else. It's such a horrible thing. Anyway, back to happy things, adultery. So in those days, in the Torah's time, you needed to get married. You had to get married, otherwise you were going to die. You had to get, marriage was an essential thing, and the whole idea of nobody even considered the possibility of a woman wanting to get divorced. How would that even happen? What woman would want to get divorced, right? And the Torah doesn't say, and over there, oh yeah, and there are some people, some of whom are intellectuals who are worthy of respect, but they cheat over here. In other words, they know they're cheating, and they do it anyway. They say, the Torah says that a rapist marries the girl he raped. How evil is that? Now, granted, for most people, that's a fair thing to say. For people like Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens, they know. The Torah, in those days, it was a world where marriage was essential, otherwise a girl's going to die. Physical labor was necessary to live. The men are doing the physical labor. The women are often pregnant or nursing, caring for the kids. The kids will not live if you don't have one of the parents doing that. Obviously, the only parent that can get pregnant is the woman, etc. That's how it works. The men are out there working. The responsibility is pretty much all from the side of the husband to the wife, other than the adultery aspect of it and a few other things. For the most part, it's the husband to the wife. And therefore, the Torah says, if you rape or even if you seduce, Frank Sinatra was actually arrested on the crime of seduction. You can see his mugshot. Seduction was a crime in America not very long ago. If you rape or even seduce somebody, a girl, then you have to marry, you get punished otherwise as well, but you have to marry her so that she doesn't die. Otherwise, who's going to want to marry her? Nobody's going to want to marry her. Maybe she's having your kid, etc. The way these things work. I don't have to tell you humanity. And therefore, you have to marry her. Right? That's the context of the Torah. Now, I don't care to explain the depth of that right now, only to point out that when someone's trying to disprove it by saying, ha ha ha, look at how evil that is, they're showing themselves either to be idiots or to be lying. Either they don't understand what the world there was like and they really can't see beyond their nose, or they are their own time in this case, or they are they know and they're using unfair arguments. They know the context, and they know that within the context of the Torah, it was 100% as moral as reality itself allowed. And that at the end of the day, this is not recommended in this day. In other words, this is not how these things work. And trying to claim that the Torah says that this is how it should work today, that if you rape a girl, you get to marry her, that you're cheating. Richard Dawkins knows he's cheating. If and when he says that, not saying, I'm not going to, I hope that I get famous enough that he can point out to me that I never said precisely that. What I said was, I hope so, because I have respect for the man. I really, genuinely, 100% do have respect for him. I like him. I met him. Anyways, so in that world of the Torah, adultery is something where there is a man and a woman and they each require each other to live. It's a whole different world, requires a lot of explanation. But more importantly is we do not, at a wedding, there's a blessing made. The people who conduct the wedding, you make a blessing on the wedding of the bride and groom. Really. And among these blessings is that they should live as Adam and Eve in Eden before the sin. Ki Gan Eden mikedem. Like Gan Eden in the East or in the early times. Now, setting aside exactly what Eden would have been physically, it's very, very clear what it's supposed to be. And what is that world? What was it like when Adam and Eve had no shame, when they didn't understand the idea of nakedness, the idea of hiding, the idea of secrets? What was it like before Eve seduced Adam into eating the apple because of her fear. And then Adam, he was given an opportunity to save the both of them. People forget that. Instead of trying to understand and take responsibility and to figure out what they could do to fix the problem, he told God, it won't me. It was the woman. She seduced me. Weren't me. That's when God's like, no. You guys messed up. Before that time, they were like one person. The Bible says it couldn't be clearer. Eve comes out of Adam's rib is how it's described. Again, if people are going to say, well, that don't be possible. Yes. Unfortunately, I got to do the only legal voice in video for making fun of stupid people in English is the Southern accent. So when I'm making fun of Richard Dawkins, I'm using it too. It's not against Southerners in this case. I think that's very clearly understood. Well, that don't be possible, Mr. Dawkins. It really, he's, yeah. So ignoring the rib business, the fact is that the way it's described is very clearly that the woman is coming from Adam, and it says, after that you are one, not after that, you are one flesh. It says, therefore, a man should leave his father and mother, v'yedabek be'ishto, he should be glued to his wife, getting very graphic there, literally, devek. V'yedabek be'ishto, he should be glued to his wife, v'yiu lebasar echad, and they should become, again, one flesh. Adam says, wow, this is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. That's the first thing that Adam has to say. They should be like that time. Everything not like that, as the rabbis and as the Christian Bible, as I started to say before, clearly point out, is kind of adulterous. Is kind of adulterous. You kind of are committing adultery if you have a perspective with your spouse that's not like that. Don't get me wrong, everyone's doing it today. In all my years, I have seen precisely one. I myself come from a difficult background marriage-wise. My grandparents were all children during the Holocaust, and their families were all wiped out. They came out, you can imagine, a little bit insane. And the world that ended up producing me is a world in which people did not really understand whatsoever how to do this relationship marriage thing at all. So I've always been like, no, if it's not perfect, it's worse than death. I don't want it. I'm not, So I've never been married. And there's literally precisely one marriage that I've seen in all my life, and I've investigated. I investigate all the things I'm interested in. I really do, to the ends of the earth. I've seen one that I wouldn't mind. One. O-N-E. Since that woman passed away, now I've seen none. I mean, none that I know of today. We're all committing adultery. Yeah, we're going to have to leave that for the future. Talking more about Kigan Eden Mikedem. All the relationship, all the sex, all the gender stuff. And we're going to have to start from well beyond, especially, it depends who my audience is. If my audience is mostly religious, as it is right now, we're going to have to skip everything of the last 50 years. We're not going to discuss trans, we're not going to discuss homosexuality. We're going to talk heterosexual relationships the way that we imagine they were based on black and white movies on television. We're going to talk about that further back. But again, after this interest and after we're finished with the Ten Commandments series. For now, lo tenaf, do not commit adultery in your relationships, whatever they are right now. Be careful, don't commit adultery. But more importantly, because what I'm talking right now is mostly not for us as individuals, because all of these are societally dependent. All of these, even Sabbath, even the word God, even the idea of not saying Yehovah, as you keep saying, are you here? I'm saying Yehovah, 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 Yehovah. I'm saying it. Because it's just a sound without meaning today. I'm trying to bring back the meaning. I'm trying to bring back where I don't have to explain in every video at great length, that I'm not talking about any of the gazillion false gods. So, yeah, all that's going to be very necessary, inshallah, God willing, if we have a following and if I live to see it. So, for my living to see it, kindly join up on Substack. And after we're done with the Ten Commandments series, we're going to have things only for people who are subscribers there. And please share. Please share this, because the platform here ain't going to do it. It doesn't do it. So please share this. Let us, whatever age you are, for the time that we have left in this world, let us make a better friggin' world.